triggering change one heartbeat at a time. Battle for Freedom. Hello everyone, I'm your host Watson Prunier from Battle for Freedom on Mojo Fiber Radio, and just want to let you know that we have a great day ahead for you here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in someone who is currently running for office. You know, when we try to get people who are going to represent us, and we want to make certain that we have a voice that is speaking up for the Constitution, speaking up for our rights, and making certain that everything is done correctly and in order. When we need people of character, we need people who want to honor God, honor family, honor country. Well, I'm going to bring you one of those candidates. We're going to be speaking to him. He is a friend. He's a friend of Dylan and Steven from Defenders Live longer than I've known him. I met him a few years ago at CPAC in 2018. Seems like eons ago now. But you know what I'm going to do is there's two things I want to do. Yours is New Life Holistic, because there's going to be, as he speaks about liberty, many of you are going to be
triggered,
and that's okay. If you're going to be triggered, let's get you some New Life Holistic. It was reported in 2019 that the number of Americans taking multiple medications had grown rapidly between 2000 and 2012. From the numbers of 8.2% to 15%, this nightmare has overwhelmed our American society. Are you among those who are taking more medications than you need? Have you lost count of the different medications, or do they have severe reactions to you that do not allow you to think clearly, function clearly? You find yourself often in a vegetative state. Why not try something different? New Life Holistic. New Life Holistic is a company that offers biofeedback therapy and offers you ability to recover from many of the ailments destroying society today. All I can say is New Life Holistic may be your solution without the pills. New Life Holistic. Contact them today. Contact them today and let them know that Watson from Battle for Freedom sent you. And we're going to just, at this point, I'm just going to shut up and I'm going to bring in our guest, because the fact that you're here for him and you're not here for me, you deal with me enough times during the week. Let's do this. Alan, how you doing? Alan Chesser, NC House, North Kakalaki House Representative. How you doing today, brother?
Good morning, Watson. How are you, bud?
I'm doing awesome. I appreciate you doing this here. A lot of questions normally people say is, in the day when you see so much corruption in politics, clearly the challenges that we're seeing with what seems tyrannical going on right now, many people say that's just crazy. Why do you put yourself through the dangers of, or the drama of politics?
I don't know. My wife asks me that question all the time too. I think it's because a long time ago I figured out I just don't have the ability to sit silent while tyranny reigns and while tyranny expands in the state. And big ass state, as in the country. I just don't have the ability to sit by silently as our liberties are eroded away. And I've always been that way. I've always been the type to walk up and tell the bully, no more.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing this, because the fact that, again, with you stepping up and doing what many people are not so key to do, it puts you in a position to basically start setting an example that we need to see more and more in politics. I have a friend who's struggling right now. Well, I'll save this for later. Let's get into some of your other different things here. A couple of things that you said, and I'm going to pull some of the things that you've talked about, and we're going to go over those. But I sent you an email the other day about the idea that the Republicans said that if they take control of the House, they're going to set up all these panels to investigate the failures of Afghanistan and all these different things of what Joe Biden's done. For me, as I was expressing to you, for me, it feels like it's more of a tit for tat thing instead of, hey, we need to start representing the people, getting legislation passed and forced to continue what we promised the people in the first place. Am I wrong to say that it feels like we're in this tit for tat situation in politics?
No, not at all. That seems to be the driving mentality of the general public right now. Is people are hurt, people have suffered, especially over the last 2 years since COVID first became a thing. Most of that suffering has occurred at the hand of the government and government bureaucrats. Um, but people are lashing out. They want revenge. They know they've been wronged and they want it righted. They want the record corrected in some way, and so they're giving into vengeance. And the problem is, instead of our elected officials being leaders and encouraging us to pump the brakes, and encouraging us to take the higher road, or be better people through this, to grow through this, they're more concerned about votes, and so they're encouraging it. And so we saw that in 2020, and then the vengeance that ensued through the Democrat Party and all their investigations, and nothing's really come of it. But they got to drag people through the mud, which is all they wanted. And so now the Republicans are promising to do the same thing, where there is some merit to, say, an investigation into the withdrawal of Afghanistan. Me as a combat vet, I would love to find out who made the poor decisions that created such a humanitarian crisis in a country that, whether you agree with it or not, we had to stabilize, and so we were trying to stabilize. Um, while I support ending the war and getting out, I've been very vocal on that for a long time. Um, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. I understand ripping the Band-Aid off, but we made a lot of promises we didn't keep over there.
Good,
And
agreed.
so that one I would support a panel getting into, and seeing what actually happened there. But that's not really the mentality of how these panels are being presented. They're being presented as revenge.
Pretty much, and we have to get beyond revenge. Even now, as a couple of days ago, there's the infamous line from the President of the United States of America with respect to a press briefing where he makes a statement about, for the unvaccinated, you're looking at a winter of severe illness and death for yourselves, your families, and the hospitals you may soon overwhelm. So our message is to every American is clear. There is action you can take to protect yourself and your family. Wear a mask in public indoor settings. Get vaccinated, get your kids vaccinated, and get a booster shot when you're eligible. So there's so much concerning with that statement, because it seems between F-15s and booster shots, the president has a tenacity to basically order people to do things against their will. I feel like it's threats that are being made to the people. I mean, to the American people, not just the not just the vaccinated, but the unvaccinated, because making a harsh statement as such addressed to the unvaccinated could in any way be soon targeted to the vaccinated. Well, you need your 15th booster. I know you're tired of another booster, but you're going to take another booster. So what do we do to rein in this kind of language, Alan, that, for what it's worth, it seems like it's tyrannical?
So I think we get this in two parts. One is we the people, right? Um, we the people have to stop hating our enemies. We've grown away from the biblical calling to love our enemies, right? Love our neighbors as ourselves and love our enemies. And so that's the root cause of what we're experiencing now. We now celebrate when bad things or unfortunate things happen to people we see as our political enemies or our sociological enemies, or however you want to put it. It's we can see this, for example, in the far right or the anti-vaccine community, whatever term you choose to designate them with, they celebrate in ways. You can see them on social media just pushing it out when they discover a blood clot in someone who was vaccinated. They're like, see, we told you, and almost in a celebratory way that they were right, forgetting that, this is a brother or sister that now has a blood clotting disorder or has died.
Yeah.
And then we see it the other way too, where, if an unvaccinated person ends up getting COVID and ends up in the hospital, the left comes out and almost this celebratory victory lap of saying, this is why you got to get vaccinated. This is why you have to
Yeah.
get vaccinated. We
Yeah.
need to remember that, look, first, we're all individuals. We're all loved by God. We should be loved by each other,
Amen.
right?
Amen.
And so we have the liberty to choose, and there are consequences that come with choice. Regardless of what choices we make, there will be consequences that come with choice, but you are still free to choose. And so let's celebrate the freedom of choice and not the consequences that come from that choice. And so that's part one. I know that was a long part. And part two is getting once we begin to uh, reestablish that love that we have for one another as a people, we can really get back into putting the government back in their box.
Yeah.
Um, the executive branch simply doesn't have the authority to do what it's trying to do right now. Uh, and so we've seen government grow exponentially over the last 2 years, whether at the state level or the federal level. Currently, I'm focused on the state level, but it's hard not to pay attention to what's happening on the federal level, where the executive branch, the courts continue to strike down these orders because they just lack the authority to execute them. Right? That is, the executive branch lacks the authority. But it's not stopping them from pushing out their propaganda and in the news media saying that, everyone needs to do this, everyone needs to get vaccinated because there's a mandate. Um, uh, my company was one of those companies. Fortunately, they pushed back, waiting to see what the courts will say. But we need to get back to this. That's why one of the major reasons why I'm running for state house is because we need to reestablish the principles of nullification and interposition. Now, those are big, fancy 1776 language that most people look at you as soon as you say that, like you need to wear a tinfoil hat. But literally, all it means is constitutionally, the state can step in on behalf of the people and tell the federal government that doesn't happen here. And we need to get back to that. And the only level that can happen at is the state. So you can take it down to the county level, but it's carries significantly less impact. So I believe that the states need to start standing up to the federal government and saying that's all well and good. You're out of control. We talked to you about your spending. We've talked to you about your executive orders. We've talked to you about all these things. You know what? From now on, it doesn't happen here. Like for us, we can just say that's great, Mr. President, but it's not going to happen in North Carolina.
Cool. And that's good because of the fact that we have to get back to that nullification and the other word that you said.
Interposition.
Interposition. Okay.
Yeah.
Words that we don't hear enough. It's many people say it's a 1776 term, but I mean, why is it that those terms or 1776 is only valid on 4th of July, or only required during rallies? Why should it not be our rally cry every day that we wake up, thanking God that we have the ability to live in a land where these opportunities for freedom and so much more that are not available in other countries? We should be waking up every day thankful that God has woken us up and birthed us, or even positioned us to be in this country. But our actions usually speak different to those. I was talking to Alan about just the whole idea of theoreticals. I'm running for office. I get elected president of the United States of America. One of the things that I don't like that's happening right now is a lot of my brothers and sisters in Christ and as citizens of America who don the uniform to support and defend the Constitution, they're being kicked out of the military. because they refused to get a jab. And one of the things that I wanted to do was I was thinking, okay, well, I'm going to create an executive order that basically says all those individuals who are fired are put back in office. Now, one of the things that you're going to get if you don't know Alan yet, is Alan is a historian. Uh, and there's a lot of stuff.
Strong language.
he says things and he challenges you because everything gets back to you. Remember, we the people, the U.S. Constitution, our individual rights and liberties, the function of government, the function of the people. There are a lot of different things that you will be challenged as you have a conversation with Alan, and you'll find yourself that your thought process, your speaking process, you have to be challenged to change our language from a lot of the partisan foolishness that we're using right now, a lot of the cliches that have been passed around, passed off as law and thought, and get back to the fundamentals of what are our rights, what is it that we can and cannot do. And at one point, I'm challenging myself, like, why would I put an executive order in if I'm tired of the other executive orders? So, Alan, I want to go in and I want to put an executive order in, basically changing and rehiring all the military individuals who have been fired because they refused the jab. Am I wrong?
Well, if I was giving you some advice, if I was one of your advisors, I would simply advise you, rather than issue a new executive order, revoke the old one. Revoke the old one that caused them to be fired in the first place, and that in retrospect would allow them to be able to come back to their job. See, that is, and you're not alone in this. I hear this all the time against people of, well, this is the problem, and that's something that we're great at doing, especially us as a Republican Party here in North Carolina. We're great at pointing out the problem and identifying a problem, but it's our solutions that are lacking. The number one thing we say that I hear is, well, here's the problem. We need a law to fix it. And that's not true. In most cases, the repealing of a current law will do just as much to correct that issue as a new law, but the repealing of the current law would remove governments from a sphere that it previously did not have power or influence and shouldn't have power and influence, thus granting more freedom to the people. And I think that is how we actually begin to get it back, is we take back our freedoms not by passing more law and continuing to expand government authority, but by repealing laws that are already on the books that are causing or allowing the government to intrude in these particular areas of our life.
So basically, they're intruding in our lives, and they seem to be laws that are not applicable to themselves. One of the things that you said, let me see, make sure that I've got this. Let me see if this is the right one. Yes. Let's see if this one applies. Alan says, I just want to be extremely clear for a moment. There should be no laws concerning general safety that apply only to elected officials and not to the people in general. That creates a caste system and is not conducive to liberty or freedom, but leads towards acceptable, quote unquote, oppression. Would you not say that we are in a form of oppression right now?
Yeah, so here's the odd part. I often get cornered with my own quotes because I write them about a particular issue and then they come back on another issue. So this one was written particularly about a law where a state legislator was trying to make it legal for state legislators and state representatives, or just elected officials within the state, to carry concealed firearms in places that the general public was not allowed to carry concealed firearms. And so while I appreciate the sentiment and I understand what he was trying to do, again, instead of passing a law that creates a caste system where elected officials have somehow gained additional rights over the general public, let's just give those rights to everyone. If carrying of the firearm is going to make you feel safe, then then carry. I don't care. But it's not the carrying of the firearm that makes you feel safe. It's that you being able to carry and everyone else not being able to carry. So it's you being armed while disarming everyone else. And so that's what I was trying to get to there. But yeah, I would think it's equally applicable in this circumstance, that the COVID circumstance that we're now experiencing, where people, especially those in elected office, would like to uh, pass laws that apply to the rest of us while segregating themselves from the enforcement of those laws.
And which is really interesting in this, because there's a friend, a brother in Christ. We haven't spoken too much lately, but I remember posting months ago about the whole idea that being vaccinated is a passport. It's a passport to freedoms and liberties that we had pre-pandemic. And he said to me, "Well, that's a lie. There's no such thing." Well, right now, literally, your job is being threatened if you're not vaccinated. If you're not vaccinated, you can't go to certain places. There's a CEE conference, Consumer and Electronics Conference, in the beginning of January, that you can't attend if you're not fully vaccinated. This term fully vaccinated, or even one jab or two jabs. And what I find very interesting, though, is that even though this executive order is passed down and affects millions and millions of Americans, it doesn't apply to people in government, yet the people in government are afforded the liberties of the vaccinated, even though they're not vaccinated. They're not required to have the vaccination. So there's these assumed rights, these assumed privileges that are given to people who don't have to abide by the laws that they create. And this caste system that even exists now, where you have, and before I continue this, because I think that there's a level of oppression, I believe there's a level of oppression here, which goes back to something that you said earlier. Imagine our society if politicians weren't constantly telling you who you should hate or who hates you. And right now, our country is so divided that, like you said, there's so much animosity between individuals that we have no time to really stop, slow down, remove ourselves from the emotions, and really see our neighbor as ourselves. Because if we really saw our neighbors as ourselves, we love them the way that God has commanded us, we would really start seeing the commonalities that we have with one another, and we see that that present threat to our liberties is not only to ourselves, but even to our neighbors, and that we come together to put the government in line to let them understand this is not how you should do this, and you should not create animosity between me and my perceived political opponent, that, my partisan opponent, but that we all are equal. I mean, I get back to I used a quote with you talking about oppression, and I think that was a great example, is that here it is, and you got to the answer where you said, well, give everybody the right, give everybody the freedom to carry guns, not just the elected officials, but everyone. The moment that we get that language back, that the freedoms apply to everyone, and we're not discriminating because of someone's race, because of someone's gender, because of even someone's socioeconomic status, when every man, for crying out loud, all men are created equal. I know,
I've heard
I'm sorry.
that before.
I have a tendency to get very passionate about this. There are a lot of comments that everyone's leaving inside of Facebook.com. Facebook.com/Mojo5 Radio. Leave a comment there in about 20 seconds. We're going to go to a break. And what we'll do is I'm going to shut up and let Alan speak a little bit more, because there's some more quotes I want to talk about. I'm your host, Watson Premier from Battle4Freedom. I'm going to go to a break, and we'll talk to you on the flip side. And we're going to observe 22 minutes of silence praying for our country. Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Watson Prunier from Battle for Freedom on Mojo 50 Radio. Listen, today is about Alan Chesser, NC House. Oops, I forgot to update the title on the top there because it's not about abusive love and broken people. But you know what? Honestly, to tell you the truth, in a way, yes, it is, Alan, because of the fact that we as American citizens have been abused by government overreach. And many of us
we've got like a Stockholm syndrome. We've fallen in love with our abusers.
Yes, we have fallen in love with our abusers, and honestly, and we're close to being broke, and we are broken people. And I think one of the things here, I can't believe I forgot to change the header. I'm sorry about that. But this whole idea that, again, I think you said it best, Stockholm syndrome. So, Alan, what steps do we take to reduce something? Comment that one of the persons was saying earlier was, I guess, just getting back to some of the things that we had. He said, I wish conservatives would find a different way to make our system work when they get in power. A system where education is private groups. If we believe in competition, then we should strive for it. That was one of the comments by Mitchell Brady.
Yeah, so education is a fun thing to talk about. But so I think there's two parts that we can break out of there. One is conservatives. Just for generic terms, I'm going to use Republicans because that's what they are the ones that run as conservatives and Democrats run as liberals. And so the problem that we run into the Republicans is we're the greatest resistance party that's ever existed in the history of this country. When we're not in power, man, we fight for freedom, we fight for liberty, we fight for all the right things. But it's like when we win the majority, we don't know what to do with our hands anymore. And so we just go back, we revert to using the same tactics of what we were just resisting because it worked for them, so we'll do it. And so we really have to stop electing familiar names and start electing leadership. Some people who will stand in the room full of children and say, no, I don't care who started it, I'm ending it, right? So it comes down to, and that starts locally from county commissioners all the way to the state house and to the Congress and to the Senate. And we really have to start electing mature, responsible adults to positions of authority, people who have proven that they're not just going to go along to get along. And in the particular statement that, what's it, Mr. Dupree,
Mitchell.
Mrs. Dupree? I don't know.
Yeah.
Mitchell.
Dupree.
There we go. Dupree. There we go. I just wrote down the last name. So, sorry.
Okay.
That they made was about education. And so I've actually got a thing here for education here in our state that I would love to get through if I was a state rep, which is that education funding should follow the student regardless of where the parent chooses to educate the child. That will create competition amongst the schools. They would then have to compete with someone they've never really had to compete with for funding before, which is the homeschool element. I mean, it would free up more families to homeschool and spend more time with their children because the funding would follow the child. And so another added benefit to that is you could track where the money goes. So people, in theory, would flee underperforming schools for higher performing schools. And therefore, you could then go to those underperforming schools and figure out what needs to change there, how you can help build them up. And you could actually go to the schools that everyone's going to and see, okay, what are these guys doing different that's drawing all these people in, that's causing their children to have success? You just have to, it all comes down to trust. You have to trust people to do what's in their best interest. And that is the one thing you can always trust people to do, is whatever they think will benefit them the most. Politics plays on it. That's why they play on fear. If you're afraid of the opposition, then psychologically you think it's in your best interest to go with the party that you support because you're not afraid of them, right? That is why politics plays on fear. I must make you see this other side as evil and detrimental to you so that you make the best decision for you. And so I want to roll that back and actually trust people to make the best decision for them and just see where it goes. It's kind of Australian economics and education, right? Let's not reverse engineer this thing. Let's just follow the money and see where it goes.
Speaking of education, and I'm glad that Mitchell had brought that up. There is another statement that you made because I'm going to get you with another one of your quotes. CRT would not
They
matter.
just keep getting longer.
CRT would not matter if, one, the government wasn't assigning curriculums and dictating what our children learn, or two, school choice was empowered by allowing the funding to follow the students, even if they don't attend traditional schools. So you pretty much covered the first part of, you just basically covered the second part of your statement there. Let's get back into your first one about the whole idea of government not assigning curriculums and dictating what our children should learn. Expand on that a little bit more if you can.
Yeah, so here in North Carolina, our Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson actually started a bit of a commission, if you will, into our education system. And he found some pretty disturbing things. Some of the approved text for children to be reading in middle school and such had pornographic images and pornographic references in it. So it's pretty appalling, the stuff that he found. And again, I agree that there's an issue here. There's a problem here that needs to be addressed. However, they then take this and turn it into a CRT argument or critical race theory argument, which is a curriculum that's attempted to be brought into the schools, and they oppose it with their own curriculum. And so again, my solution is not more government control or an equal amount of government control. My question is, why is the state issuing a curriculum at all? I understand if the state wants to have baselines. So the state wants to have, standardized into school testing to make sure that each child is achieving the minimum required to move on to the next grade. I'm fine with that, but the curriculum should be established as locally as possible. That is what will give the parents the ultimate freedom to choose what they want their children to learn, because either the parents are going to teach the kids in the house, like we homeschool in our house, and the state does not dictate our curriculum at all. But teachers don't get to teach what they want in the classroom anymore either, even at public schools, because the curriculum is dictated to them. Why not give teachers the freedom to teach in the classroom? And people are so afraid on both the left and the right. Well, what would be taught? Well, if you don't like what's taught, then you go to your school and you either, tell them, hey, you might want to find another teacher, because we're still a right to work state, right? So no one is guaranteed a job here, because that's just not the way liberty works. Or you just simply take your funding, because in my plan, the funding would follow your child, and say, okay, since you're allowing that to be taught in your school, we're going to take our little bag of money, because they don't care about the kid, they care about the money, and you move it to another school. And that will get them, it's money votes, it's dollar votes.
So one of the questions that I have for you, and two. One, have you seen the latest God is Not Dead, We the People? Because that latest installment is dealing with homeschooling being attacked by the government and trying to regulate people. And I have concerns, because my family may be driven to homeschooling because we're kind of concerned a lot of what's taking place in the school environment. I didn't even know that until 1993 that homeschooling was illegal in this country. And two, are there going to be things in place that continue to protect the liberties of people like families like yours that homeschool? Because it seems as the government's overreaching and telling us what we need to do medically with our body. Why should it not overreach as well completely and tell us what to do with our education as well? When do you, as homeschoolers, become pariah like the unvaccinated? If that makes any sense.
No, absolutely. I think that is why now is so important. I mean, as long as I have a voice, I'm going to stand for liberty and freedom. And like I said, I don't have to agree with what you're doing with your liberty and freedom, and I'll still fight for it. That's the beauty of it. So I think I can only really speak to North Carolina as it goes for homeschool. We have a really strong homeschool coalition in the state. They're very politically active. So I would feel pretty safe that the protections would remain even in the state just for those reasons alone. But I can guarantee that those protections will not be stripped away in silence, and if I'm in the state house, because education is not a constitutionally delegated authority to the state, big S, right? It's something that falls to the parents. It's the parents' responsibility that at some point the government stepped in and said, you know what, we can help with this. And now it's not that we can help with this. Now it has become, we've got this, you stay out of it, to the point that they just do what they want with your kids. And if you don't like it, the only recourse you have is to go to the Board of Education and voice your disdain for their decisions. And they'll just remove you from the meetings, and they'll trespass you from the premise. So you can't even air your grievances, which is odd. Constitutionally protected to petition your government so long as you're doing so peacefully. But you know that it is indicative of tyrannical government that you're not allowed to question it. They make all the decisions. They know what's best for everyone, and you are not allowed to question it. And what we have to do is we got to regain the courage to ask tough questions and to stand firm.
Yes, agreed, 100%. I mean, this is where we need to be, and we need to put more candidates like you, Alan, in there so that we reestablish the rights of the people, we the people, because I feel like it's no longer we the people, but we the what's a better word for it? We the serfs.
It's we the segment of the population that have this much authority, and then we that have this much authority, and then we that have this much authority. It's broken out by who you know and who knows you. Essentially, who answer the phone when you call. And so we are a divided people, but I don't think we're beyond repair. I think when we start holding these people who divide us accountable, we'll be reunited behind that. Love wins in the end. I've read the end of the book. Spoiler alert. Love wins in the end.
Amen.
And so that's what we have to get back to, is just you know, as a politician, as a neighbor, as a Sunday school teacher, as a youth soccer coach, whatever, just love those around you and see what happens, right?
Amen.
I think that's how we get back on track.
You know, it's interesting. I want to stay there for a second on this topic, because of the fact that right now there's a lot of despondency with people. I think you said it best when you said that politicians figure out a way to create fear in us, and we're fearful of those who are in power, and we don't believe that love can win. A good friend is really concerned about the nature of politics going forward, in reference to candidates who would be in the sphere of running for office, and who could retake the House, or who could retake the presidency, who could retake the White House. And I believe that most times we feel like we're in this David and Goliath situation. So there are candidates there. You don't have to voice your opinion on on the names that I'll start throwing your way and everything like that. But right now, a lot of people have an overconfidence in the idea of Donald Trump being the only means of us restoring America. You have Republicans right now, like Mitch McConnell and others, who are basically saying you need to have the support of Donald Trump if you really want to win in 2022, 2024. There is this language of the Matt Gaetz and others who are pro-Trump, this America first, but it seems like it's MAGA first / Trump first mentality. Now, if the goal was to drain the swamp, isn't this whole MAGA first, seeking this, getting the kiss from the blessed signet ring of Trump, is that not a new version of the swamp, that we are beholden to one man? We're beholden to one man to secure the liberties of people, where I thought that the concept of liberty was surpassed or far went beyond one individual, but it was a principle. It was a principle that outlasted any one individual at all. Have we not returned to the swamp with this mentality that we have to seek the favor of Trump?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The principles of liberty and freedom should surpass everyone. I mean, there is no one single individual outside of Jesus that encompasses the principles of liberty and freedom for all. So regardless of who that is, if it's not Jesus, you're wrong. So I would say first, I'm going to take a moment to encourage everyone here that is contemplating running for office and has been told the great lie by the party, whichever party that is. And you reference it, it's the David versus Goliath fight where there's no way to win. I love that reference because they say it to you as if it's a discouragement to stay out. But read the story, David wins. And so, so just keep that in mind. Yeah, sure, it's a David versus Goliath fight, but I know the end of that story too. And so when we come to what you call the MAGA political economy that we're in, there's two things that I point out that I always point out to people when we talk about this. One, the drawback to Trump shows something, and that is that the country currently has a savior complex. We think that Trump is the only one who can save us. That's what you hear the Republicans saying right now. That's what you hear all over the place. We have to have Trump. He's the only one who can save us. And that's not true. I already have a savior. I don't need Trump to fill that role. Regardless of what you think about him, he's not Jesus Christ. And so I already have that savior secure. I don't need Trump to fill that role. Trump doesn't need to fill that role for our country either. That is one of the problems that we're facing right now, is that we're trying to fill a God-shaped hole with a politician, whether it's Trump or whoever. We're trying to fill a God-shaped hole in our nation right now with a politician, and that's never going to work. God is never going to bless that. The other thing that I point out, and I'm a big proponent for primaries. So whenever people try to clear the field and just kind of force someone upon the people, it points out a couple things. One is a lack of choice for the people. The people should be electing their representatives, not the parties. But to me, it's indicative of a lack of a bench, right? A bench is a sports term, right? If I play baseball, basketball, whatever, there's a bench where you have substitutes in there. You have your starters and your substitutes. And I always use this reference, right? Whenever anyone asks, well, why are you primarying, or why would you want to primary whoever, right? Well, Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl last year, and odd, because when I was running for office, it was the Patriots that won the Super Bowl the year before, so my reference always revolves around Tom Brady for some reason. But the Tampa Bay won the Super Bowl last year. You think they didn't have tryouts in the offseason? Now, they brought, all 22 starters back, but they still had tryouts.
Yeah.
Just in case they could get better. Why sell yourself short by just being content with what you have?
Yeah.
At least see what's out there. At least give other people an opportunity to achieve success. So in the military, we do these things. A lot of weird habits that don't make sense, but then when you're in, and then when you get out, you realize, wait a minute, that was actually setting me up for success. And one of those is what we refer to as down and up, right? I learn the job of the guy above me, and I teach my job to the guy below me. Therefore, the mission never has, the success of the mission is never predicated on whether I'm present, because someone else can always step in and do my job. we're not doing that if we're solely dependent on one person. This is the only person who can do this. This is the only person who can save us. This is the only person who can win. That means we're not doing our job in building up those around us.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's no indictment of Trump, and it's no support either. But it's just, if I'm doing my job, if I disappear tomorrow, there can be 5 other people that step up to be able to do what I do.
Yes. Yeah, my job, they have this, my boss, he uses this phrase, do you have the documentation left over if you get hit by a bus? Or, if you win the lottery, will the machine keep running if you hit the lottery and you decide to leave? And I think that we're so easy to look for the win, and we're so desperate about looking at who are those players. We think of those star players, and I love you making the reference back in David and Goliath. David wins. There is this mentality right now. Okay, I don't know him as a person with a physical relationship with him, but there's a lot that I believe that I have experienced in being a citizen of Indiana now these 25 years, and having former Vice President Mike Pence as the governor of my state. I have some close friends that develop relationships with him, and they really speak much of his character as a believer in Christ, as a follower of Christ. And a lot of people don't. Right now, the rhetoric is going on that Mike Pence is a turncoat traitor because he didn't do what he needed to on January 6th. That when there was a rally and he got less than 1% of the vote, that he's just not a winnable character because of the fact that he is supposed to be an alleged man of principle, whom I believe a man of principle, but I could be completely wrong in this. But for some strange reason, the likes of a Mike Pence, because he doesn't have a winnable character, we shouldn't even consider him. But yet God could do whatever he wants with Trump or with that. How is it that we have language that God could use reprobate man, but he can't use humble men? Where did this language come in that basically says, because I take it to even you, is that many people will look at you and say, well, he's one of those those old folk constitutionalists, followed by the law. And, no, we need a fighter. We need someone stronger. Where did that language come in that, again, I go back to the whole idea is that many people will see you as a David versus the Goliath of the behemoth swamp that stands before us and our liberties? Where did this language come from?
Well, I think it comes, there's a couple of different ways to look at this as well. I wish I could give you straight answers on anything, right? But I'll just parse it all out for you. So I think it comes from us projecting our desires and as God's desires. And so if you go back to, Samuel and Kings in the Bible, God didn't give them a king. The people wanted a king. And then they described what they wanted in a king, right? So he had to be taller than everyone else. He had to be bigger than everyone else. He had to be this warrior. And then for a little while, he was a good king, and then he wasn't anymore. And God gave him the king that they needed, right? Or a king that would be after his own heart, right? And he didn't look like a king. He's actually the same kid from the story that you just referenced a minute ago with David versus Goliath. He ended up replacing their king with David. Yeah. And so, but we get caught in this where, especially, the evangelical right? So when you're talking about politically active Christians, we really try to interpose our will and our desire as God's will. Again, read the Bible. God's will is not always pleasant for his people. So if everything that you are looking at and saying, this is the will of God, is pleasant and pleasing to you, you might want to check what is actually driving that. It may not actually be the will of God, because sometimes God is going to grow us through pain and through strife and through suffering. So that would be my cautionary tale there. Just from, I guess, an evangelical standpoint, is you know, check your Christian privilege at the door.
That's a beautiful answer. That was such a beautiful answer. Because it's so funny that you would say David and you go to Samuel. Because right now, I think you said it perfect about the idea that we're willing what God wants. We're in our desires. 1 Samuel chapter 16 verse 7 said, "But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look on his appearance or on the height or of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks on the heart." And I think that, because of the fact that we spend so much time, Alan, hating one another, we stopped spending time knowing one another and developing a relationship to see, what is this person's character like? Does this person fulfill all my needs, or have they done due diligence to their job to this point in everything that they've done? To hold one person accountable, I think that everyone holding Pence accountable for his decision not to give what people wanted on January 6th is very problematic, because I believe that there were so many dominoes long before that event that proved that there were problems with the campaign. I'm not going to talk about the issue of election fraud, but I believe that there were many things, because of so much partisanship, for so much division, that we hated one another, and there was no effort to reach across the aisle, and just not even the political aisle in Congress, but against the political aisle that's been driven by the media, by social media, to basically say, you know what, hey folks, we may not agree politically with one another, but I do care about you. Holy cow, we are near the end. I want to read this thing quickly here. This was part of Alan's letter. "My values are simple: faith, family, and freedom. Now more than ever, it is obvious that we need strong vocal leadership to stand up for the rights of the people. The last year has shown that defending our liberties require more than empty promises. It requires action. I spent my adult life in service to the state of North Carolina. It would be an honor to continue that service as a representative to the people." Alan, how do people reach out to you and connect with you and support you?
Well, I mean, I have a website. It's alanchesser.com. I've maintained that website for quite a while to make it easy for people to find me. Facebook, we just changed the name over to Alan Chesser for NC, and then that's pretty much it. All my socials are on the website. If anybody wants to reach out, just send me a message. It'll probably be me that responds.
Awesome. Because he will respond. He definitely does, to my texts, to my messages, to everything. And he'll respond for you. North Kakalaki, here's your representative. Elect him. If not, you're in trouble. Don't be dummy. Pick Alan Chesser for new NC House. If not, you deserve what you get. No, I'm just saying. Thanks, Alan. I appreciate you, brother. Hold on for a second.
Thank you, sir.
Hold on for a second. We'll talk in a minute. Okay. I'm sorry.